The fluorescent lights in Mercy General's ICU corridor buzzed with that familiar hospital hum that had become the soundtrack to my sleepless nights. I pressed my back against the cold vinyl chair, watching the steady rise and fall of Grandma Eleanor's chest through the glass partition. 3 weeks she'd been here, fighting pneumonia at 87, her frail body connected to machines that beeped and wheezed like mechanical prayers. "She's stable," Dr. Martinez had said that morning, his kind eyes betraying the exhaustion of a man who'd delivered too much bad news. "But the sedation is necessary. Her body needs rest to heal." Sarah, my older sister, sat beside me, her manicured fingers scrolling through her phone with practiced indifference. At 35, she'd perfected the art of looking concerned while remaining emotionally detached, a skill that served her well in her real estate career, but made family gatherings feel like business meetings. "I spoke with her lawyer today," she said without looking up, her voice carrying that matter-of-fact tone she used when discussing property transactions. "Harold Bennett. He's ancient, David. Probably hasn't updated his practice since the Carter administration." I turned to study her profile, the sharp jawline we'd both inherited from Dad, the perfectly styled blonde hair that never seemed to move even in the hospital's recycled air. "What did you need to talk to him about?" "Grandma's will. She mentioned wanting to make some changes before—" Sarah's voice trailed off, but her fingers never stopped moving across her phone screen. "She was worried about you, actually. Your job situation." The words hit like ice water. I'd been laid off from my teaching position 6 months ago when the district made budget cuts. The substitute work barely covered my rent in the cramped apartment I'd moved to after my divorce. Sarah knew this, knew how the financial strain had been eating at me, knew how much I'd been relying on Grandma's emotional support to get through each day. "What kind of changes?" I asked, though something in my chest was already tightening with dread. Sarah finally looked at me, her green eyes holding an expression I couldn't quite read. She wanted to make sure the house and the bulk of the estate went to someone who could really use it, someone stable, someone who could take care of things properly. The beeping from Grandma's room seemed to grow louder. Through the glass, I could see her weathered hands resting on the white hospital blanket, the same hands that had taught me to bake cookies, helped me with homework, held me when Mom and Dad divorced. Those hands had worked 60 years in the textile factory, saved every penny, bought the little blue house on Maple Street, where she'd raised 4 children after Grandpa died young. "She's not gone yet, Sarah," I said quietly. "Maybe we shouldn't be talking about this here." "I'm being practical, David. That's what families do. We plan ahead." She slipped her phone into her designer purse and stood, smoothing her pencil skirt. "I'm going to grab coffee. Want anything?" I shook my head, watching her walk away in those clicking heels that announced her presence long before she entered a room. The hallway fell quiet except for the distant murmur of nurses and the ever-present electronic symphony of the ICU. That's when I saw him. Harold Bennett was shuffling down the corridor, his ancient leather briefcase clutched in arthritic hands, his wispy white hair askew like he'd been running his fingers through it. At 82, he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned to navigate the world despite failing eyesight and trembling hands. "Mr. Bennett?" I stood, surprised to see him here. He squinted at me through thick glasses, his blue eyes watery but sharp. "David? David Morrison?" "Yes, sir." "I didn't expect to see you here." His weathered face creased into a frown. "Your sister called, said Eleanor wanted to see me urgently, said she was lucid and asking for me." He glanced toward Grandma's room, then back at me. "But she doesn't look very lucid from here." A chill ran down my spine. "She's been sedated for 3 weeks, Mr. Bennett. The doctors haven't brought her out of it yet." The old lawyer's grip tightened on his briefcase. "Sedated? But your sister said—" She said Eleanor was awake, that she was insisting on making changes to her will immediately. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim, and I could hear my own heartbeat over the hospital's mechanical hum. What kind of changes? Harold Bennett's eyes met mine, and in that moment I saw the same realization dawning in his weathered face that was crystallizing in my chest like ice forming on a winter pond. "The kind," he said slowly, "that your sister was very specific about." Then, the next morning, I found myself sitting across from Harold Bennett in his cluttered office above Murphy's Deli on Main Street. The smell of pastrami and coffee drifted up through the floorboards, mixing with the musty scent of old law books and the faint aroma of the pipe tobacco Bennett no longer smoked but still kept in a jar on his desk. "I've been practicing law for 57 years, Bennett said, his fingers trembling slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "Your grandmother has been my client for 32 of those years. I've helped her through your grandfather's death, your parents' divorce, 3 refinancings of her house, and the establishment of her will." He opened a thick manila folder, its edges worn soft with age. "Eleanor Morrison is one of the most clear-headed people I know. Even at 87, she could recall details about her finances that would impress an accountant. That's why yesterday troubled me so deeply." I leaned forward, the old wooden chair creaking beneath me. Through the window, I could see the autumn leaves beginning to turn, painting Grandma's beloved downtown in shades of gold and amber. "What exactly did Sarah tell you?" "She said your grandmother was awake and lucid, that she was distressed about your situation and wanted to make immediate changes to her will. She said Eleanor was worried you couldn't handle the responsibility of the house and the estate, that you'd proven yourself unreliable." The words stung because they echoed my own worst fears. Since the divorce, since losing my job, I'd felt like I was drowning in a sea of my own inadequacies. But Grandma had never made me feel that way. She'd been my anchor, my soft place to land when everything else fell apart. "That doesn't sound like her," I said quietly. Bennett nodded, pulling out a stack of legal documents. "That's what I thought. So I did something I've never done in my career. I called the hospital directly and spoke to Dr. Martinez. I told him I was Eleanor's attorney and needed to verify her mental capacity for legal proceedings." He paused, his blue eyes studying my face. "David, your grandmother hasn't been conscious for more than a few minutes at a time in 3 weeks. She's been heavily sedated, and during her brief moments of awareness, she's been disoriented and confused. There's no way she could have made coherent decisions about her will." The room seemed to spin slightly. I gripped the arms of my chair, feeling the worn wood smooth beneath my palms. "So Sarah lied to you?" "It appears that way, but there's more." Bennett reached into his briefcase and pulled out another folder, this one newer, with crisp edges and a recent date stamped on the tab. "Your sister brought me these documents yesterday, claiming they were Eleanor's handwritten notes about the changes she wanted made." He spread several pages across his desk. I recognized the handwriting. It looked like Grandma's careful script, the kind she used for grocery lists and birthday cards, but something felt off about it, like a song played in the wrong key. "I've seen your grandmother's handwriting for over 3 decades, Bennett said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I've watched it change as she's aged, watched her arthritis affect her grip, watched her letters become less steady. This—" He tapped the documents with one gnarled finger. "This is good, but it's not quite right." "You think Sarah forged these?" "I think your sister is a very ambitious woman who may have convinced herself she's doing what's best for the family. But David, there's something else you need to know." He leaned back in his chair, which groaned under his weight. 3 months ago, your grandmother came to see me. She wanted to make changes to her will, but not the kind your sister described. Bennett opened the original folder and pulled out a handwritten letter in Grandma's unmistakable script, shakier than the forged documents, with the slight tremor I'd noticed in her Christmas cards. She wrote this letter to accompany the changes she wanted to make. She was worried about your sister's marriage, about some financial troubles Sarah was having that she'd been hiding from the family. She wanted to ensure that you, David, would inherit the house and the majority of her estate. She said you were the one who visited her every week, who called her every day, who truly cared about her as a person rather than as an asset. The words on the page blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I could hear Grandma's voice in every carefully chosen word, could feel her love radiating from the paper like warmth from her kitchen stove. She never completed the changes, Bennett continued. She said she wanted to talk to both of you first, wanted to make sure there wouldn't be hard feelings. She was still weighing her decision when she got sick. So the current will splits everything equally between you and Sarah, just as it has for the past 15 years. But David, if your grandmother recovers, if she regains consciousness and can communicate clearly, I believe she'll want to make those changes she was considering. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, feeling a mixture of gratitude and dread. What do we do now? Bennett closed the folders and leaned forward, his weathered hands folded on the desk. We wait. We pray your grandmother recovers. And we make sure that when she does, she's protected from anyone who might try to take advantage of her condition. Including my sister. The old lawyer's expression grew sad. Including your sister. That evening I found Sarah in Grandma's kitchen, going through cabinets with the methodical efficiency of someone conducting an inventory. She'd changed out of her business attire into jeans and a sweater, but she still wore her pearls, the ones Grandma had given her for her college graduation. David, she looked up from a box of china, her smile bright but somehow strained. I was just organizing things, making sure everything's properly catalogued. You know how Grandma is about her dishes. The house felt different without Grandma's presence. The familiar scents of lavender and baking bread had been replaced by the sterile smell of disinfectant and the mustiness of a home that had been closed up too long. Her favorite chair sat empty by the window, the worn cushions still holding the impression of her body. I talked to Harold Bennett today, I said, not bothering with pleasantries. Sarah's hands stilled on the china. Oh, how is the old codger? Confused. Apparently, someone told him that Grandma was awake and wanted to change her will. Someone who forged documents to make it look like she wanted to leave everything to her eldest grandchild. The color drained from Sarah's face, but she quickly recovered, straightening her shoulders in that way she'd perfected in boardrooms. I don't know what you're talking about. The handwriting, Sarah. Bennett's been reading Grandma's handwriting for 30 years. He knows the difference between her real script and a forgery. She set down the china plate she'd been holding and turned to face me fully. You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under, David. No idea what it's like to have real responsibilities. Responsibilities like fraud, like keeping this family together. Her voice cracked, and for a moment I saw past the polished exterior to the scared woman underneath. Do you know what's happening to me? What's happening to my marriage? I'd heard rumors, whispers at family gatherings about Brad's gambling, about missed mortgage payments, about Sarah's real estate business struggling in the current market. But she'd always maintained her perfect facade, never letting anyone see the cracks. Talk to me, I said quietly. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Talk to you? You can barely keep your own life together. You lost your job, your wife, your house. You're living in that pathetic apartment, substituting at schools that don't even want you full-time. What could you possibly understand about real problems? The words hit like physical blows, each one landing on insecurities I'd been carrying for months. But underneath the hurt, I felt something else, a deep sadness for the woman my sister had become. "I understand enough to know that Grandma loves us both," I said, "and I understand that she would never want us to destroy each other over money." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained hard. "She's dying, David. We both know it. And when she goes, that house, that estate, it's all we'll have left of her. I can't let you throw it away like you've thrown away everything else." "I wouldn't throw it away. Wouldn't you? You'd probably sell it within a year, take the money and blow it on some ridiculous dream, like going back to school or starting a business. At least I'd preserve it, keep it in the family." "By stealing it? By ensuring it goes to someone who can actually take care of it?" She was shouting now, her carefully constructed mask finally cracking completely. "Brad owes people money, David. Dangerous people. I could lose everything, my house, my business, my marriage. Grandma's estate could save me." The kitchen fell silent, except for the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I looked around at the familiar space, the worn Formica counters where Grandma had taught me to cook, the window over the sink where she'd stood washing dishes while telling me stories about her childhood, the small table where we'd sat for countless meals and conversations. "She was going to leave it to me anyway," I said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. "What?" "Bennett showed me a letter she wrote 3 months ago. She was planning to change the will in my favor. She was worried about your finances, about your marriage. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of." For a moment, Sarah looked like she might collapse. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white against the pale Formica. "That's not... She wouldn't... She would. Because she knows I love her for who she is, not for what she can give me. Because she knows I visit her every week because I want to, not because I'm keeping track of what I might inherit." The tears came then, real ones that smeared her makeup and made her look younger, more vulnerable. "I love her too, David. I'm so scared. I don't know what else to do." I wanted to comfort her, to bridge the gap that had grown between us over the years, but I also thought about Grandma lying in that hospital bed, trusting us to protect her when she couldn't protect herself. "We figure it out together," I said. "But first, you need to call Bennett and tell him you made a mistake. You need to withdraw those forged documents." Sarah wiped her eyes, leaving dark streaks on her cheeks. "And if I don't, then I'll have to tell him the truth, all of it. And I'll have to tell the police too, because fraud is a crime, Sarah, even when it's family." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, weighing her options like she would with a difficult client. Finally she nodded. "I'll call him tomorrow," she whispered. But as I walked back to my car, I had the sinking feeling that my sister's promise was as fragile as the autumn leaves falling around me, beautiful but ultimately doomed to crumble at the first strong wind. 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of Bennett's law office, my hands trembling as I held a folder containing documents that would change everything. The morning sun streamed through the old windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. I'd barely slept, knowing that this moment would define not just my future, but the future of my relationship with my sister. Sarah hadn't called Bennett to withdraw the forged documents. Instead, she doubled down, hiring a younger lawyer named Marcus Webb, who specialized in estate law and had a reputation for aggressive tactics. She'd filed a petition claiming that Grandma's mental capacity had been compromised for months, that any changes to her will made during that time should be invalidated. But Sarah didn't know about the conversation I'd had with Dr. Martinez 3 days ago. The door chimed, and Sarah entered with her new lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s with calculating eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. Behind them came Brad, looking haggard and nervous, his usual confident demeanor replaced by the desperate energy of a man who'd run out of options. "David," Sarah nodded coolly. She'd returned to her professional mask, but I could see the strain around her eyes, the way she held herself too rigidly. Sarah. Bennett emerged from his office, moving slowly, but with purpose. Behind him came someone I hadn't expected to see, Dr. Martinez, carrying a tablet and wearing his serious expression. "What's he doing here?" Webb demanded. "Dr. Martinez is here at my request," Bennett said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. As Eleanor Morrison's physician, his testimony is crucial to these proceedings. We gathered in Bennett's office, the space feeling cramped with so many people. Sarah and her team sat on one side, while I took the chair across from them. Dr. Martinez sat beside Bennett's desk, his tablet open in front of him. "Before we begin," Bennett said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to address the allegations made by Ms. Morrison regarding her grandmother's mental capacity and the validity of certain documents." Webb leaned forward. "My client has evidence that Eleanor Morrison was not of sound mind when she allegedly made changes to her will. We have medical records showing she was on heavy medication, that she was confused and disoriented." "Actually, Doctor," Martinez interjected, "that's not entirely accurate." He looked at his tablet, then up at the room. "Mrs. Morrison was indeed heavily sedated during her stay in the ICU. However, there's something this room needs to know." The tension was palpable. Sarah's face had gone pale, and I could see her hands clenched in her lap. 3 days ago, Mrs. Morrison regained full consciousness, Dr. Martinez continued. "She's been awake and alert, asking for her family. She's been asking specifically for David and wondering why Sarah hasn't been to visit her." Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible across the room. "She's awake, fully awake, and Dr. Martinez," Bennett said, "has agreed to bring her testimony to us via video call. She insisted on participating in today's proceedings." Webb started to object, but Bennett was already connecting his computer to the large monitor on his wall. Within moments, Grandma's face appeared on the screen, propped up in her hospital bed but looking more alert than I'd seen her in months. "Eleanor," Bennett said gently, "can you hear us clearly?" "I can hear you just fine, Harold." Grandma's voice came through the speakers, carrying that familiar note of mild irritation she got when people treated her like she was fragile. "I can see everyone too. Hello, David. Hello, Sarah." "Hi, Grandma," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Sarah seemed frozen, staring at the screen with wide eyes. "Now then," Grandma continued, "I understand there's been some confusion about my will. Dr. Martinez told me that someone's been claiming I wanted to make changes while I was unconscious. That's interesting, since I've been unconscious for most of the past month." Bennett cleared his throat. "Eleanor, I need to ask you directly. Did you give anyone permission to make changes to your will on your behalf?" "Absolutely not. My will is my business, and I'll make my own decisions about it when I'm good and ready," Webb tried to interrupt. "Mrs. Morrison, with respect, the medical records show young man." Grandma's voice cut him off with the authority of someone who'd raised 4 children and managed a household for 60 years. "I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I know exactly what happened here, and I know exactly who's responsible." Her eyes on the screen moved to Sarah, and I saw my sister shrink back in her chair. "Sarah Marie Morrison," Grandma said, using the full name she'd reserved for times when Sarah was in serious trouble as a child. "Did you forge my signature on legal documents?" The room fell silent. Sarah's face was ashen, her hands trembling in her lap. Brad reached over and took her hand, but she pulled away. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I was trying to protect you, Grandma. I was trying to make sure your wishes were carried out." "My wishes? My wishes were to talk to both of you before making any changes. My wishes were to make sure this family stayed together, not to watch it tear itself apart over money." Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was scared." "Scared of what, honey?" "Of losing everything. Of not being able to take care of my family. Of not being good enough." Grandma's expression softened, and for a moment she looked like the woman who'd comforted me through countless childhood crises. "Oh, sweetheart, you think I don't know about Brad's gambling? You think I don't know about the mortgage payments you've missed? You think I don't know my own granddaughter well enough to see when she's struggling?" Sarah looked up at the screen, her makeup completely ruined. "You knew?" "I've known for months. I've been trying to figure out how to help you both without making either of you feel like failures. That's why I wanted to talk to you about the will. That's why I hadn't made any final decisions." Bennett leaned forward. "Eleanor, do you want to make those decisions now?" Grandma was quiet for a moment, studying both of us through the screen. "I want to make sure I understand what's happened here. Sarah, you forged documents and lied to my lawyer because you were afraid of losing your house." "Yes. And David, you could have kept quiet about it, could have let Harold believe those documents were real and gotten the inheritance you thought you deserved. But instead, you chose to tell the truth, even though it meant confronting your sister and potentially losing everything." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Well then," Grandma said, "I think I know exactly what needs to happen." She looked directly at Sarah. "Honey, I'm going to help you with your financial troubles, but not by giving you my estate. I'm going to loan you money to pay off Brad's debts and catch up on your mortgage. You'll pay me back over time, with no interest, because that's what family does." Sarah's eyes widened. "Grandma, I can't." "You can and you will. And Brad, you're going to get help for your gambling problem. Real help, because I won't watch you destroy my granddaughter's life." Brad nodded, his face flushed with shame and relief. "As for my will," Grandma continued, "I'm leaving the house to David. He's the one who visits me every week, who calls me every day, who loves me for who I am. The rest of the estate will be split equally between you both, but Sarah, your half will go into a trust that will provide you with monthly income rather than a lump sum. That way you'll always have security, but you won't be tempted to use it to solve temporary problems." She paused, looking at both of us with the wisdom of someone who'd lived through 8 decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and disappointment. "I love you both," she said quietly. "You're all I have left of my children, and I won't let money destroy what we have together, but I also won't let anyone take advantage of my love, not even my own granddaughter." Sarah was sobbing now, her professional facade completely shattered. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so ashamed." "Shame is a luxury we can't afford, honey. What matters now is what we do going forward. Can you live with my decision?" Sarah looked at me, then back at the screen. "Yes, and Grandma, thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Grandma said with a slight smile. "You're going to earn every penny of that loan by taking care of me when I get out of this hospital. I'm too old to be living alone anymore, and that big house is going to need someone to help maintain it." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Are you moving in with me, Grandma?" "I'm moving back to my own house, and you're moving in with me. We'll take care of each other like family should." As we left Bennett's office an hour later, Sarah walked beside me in the autumn afternoon. The legal documents were signed, the forgeries formally withdrawn, and the new will properly executed. "David," she said quietly, "I really am sorry for all of it. I know. Are we going to be okay?" I thought about it, looking at the woman who'd been my big sister, my protector, my rival, and my greatest disappointment all rolled into one. "We're going to be family," I said finally, "and family finds a way." 6 months later, Grandma was back in her kitchen, teaching me to make her famous apple pie, while Sarah stopped by every Sunday for dinner. The house on Maple Street was full of life again, full of the sounds of family learning to be family once more. And sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, I could hear Grandma humming in her room, content in the knowledge that love, not money, was the only inheritance that really mattered.